Episode 129, Hot Water History, right before July 4th weekend. What's going on, Richard?
July 4th just doesn't have the bang it once does, or it once did, at least for me. How about for you?
Yeah, not anymore.
Now, why is that, Charlie?
I don't know. Post-COVID,
Okay.
got a little hard to get fired up.
Mm-hmm.
There just doesn't seem to be that much different from us and any NATO, EU country.
Western
Every
decrepit.
everything we talk a lot in the book about nationalism versus patriotism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have much of either.
Or there, when any sort of sentiment along those lines or in that vein is expressed, it always devolves into nationalism rather than going from a nationalistic statement into the patriotic. I find that that's more the trend. So I expect that's just the trajectory of people following how Trump goes, at least in the right or on the right, because obviously he conflates the two sentiments of patriotism and nationalism. And furthermore, because there are such ardent and vehement Trump supporters, loyal Trump supporters, when he doesn't make distinctions between those two ideologies, patriotism being a pure virtuous love of country and nationalism being inordinate pride and hubris in one's homeland or people. Well, because he just kind of is the nationalist without the patriotism, therefore people just simply become nationalistic or take on and express in the verbiage and semantics of nationalism. But it would be great if, as the more articulate and I think hopefully more influential minds of the America First movement, whoever they might be, you can identify them in uh, whatever fashion or according to whoever might be expressing it at the time, whether it's Steve Bannon or someone like that, is that you move from nationalistic statements, which are, I think, vicious and misdirected and inordinate, into the patriotism. But so we never get a statement like, uh, we should recognize the influence of the dominance of the Israel lobby and how the United States carries out Israeli foreign policy missions in a blind and subordinate fashion, right? But you never get that from Trump. So, yeah, the prospects for well, just the idea of feeling patriotic is really quelled and lessened within me because even as I look at or try to focus on the positive attributes that we might term as or put into category of American, it appears as though they're on the decline. I mean, a sentiment of personal freedom, liberty, responsibility, considerations of what liberty actually means, and the departure from the classical definition and even the early Enlightenment, Adam Smith type of definition of what liberty is. That is the ability to, through your own election, determine what is the best means to direct or what are the best directions for the expenditure of the fruits of your labor. It's a quite simple concept. And when you have a taxation system run by an obviously an ostensibly decrepit, like languishing, like old Parisian boulevardier who just kind of walks around with a crutch type of government, but talks a very big game, but is rife with STDs from all of his pouring out and encounters with prostitutes, whether those prostitutes be other nations or the really malevolent institutions that are of its own creation, like the Federal Reserve or American foreign policy and imperial pursuits. Well, that's what we have. And it seems as though if you're going to follow the betting trend, that we're going to have, we could have a nominee and maybe even a president in very short order who ascended her way up the political ranks, acting like the female version of a San Francisco / Northern California Boulevardier. So,
Is that real? How real is that?
oh, I think it's very real. The betting markets are not frequently wrong about these things, and they certainly show and illustrate the trend. And if you follow the science of trends and just look at the type of rhetoric, especially that's coming out of the mainstream media, government-owned Pravda outlets like the Washington Post and the New York Times, that's what's making it's the rhetoric of those newspapers pushing Biden to step down or at the very least surrender the nomination by the time of the DNC convention here in Chicago, by the way. Well, then it's something to keep in mind. But I tweeted something along these lines. The whole prospect of a Kamala Harris presidency will do more, I suspect, to demystify and delegitimize the whole Washington bureaucratic national governmental apparatus and administrative and deep state that I hope it comes. I hope it comes to pass.
Yeah, I don't think they have I guess what would you put the odds at that it's Biden?
10% at this point.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The betting markets have it at about 38%. I would suspect it's a lot less than that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty remarkable to think back that the last presidential election was 4 years ago, 2020. Remember all the things going on during that summer?
Yeah, the summer of love that turned into summer of CNN reporting that the protesters were relatively peaceful as cars burned behind them, literally. So, and then of course, COVID had that mystical ability to not be infectious for people who are protesting racism. Its lethality and its infectious nature was somehow shut off for people going out and protesting the George Floyd, the reaction to George Floyd's death.
Yeah.
It's a wild time.
I guess what other tricks do you think they could pull?
Well, one election was stolen, rigged, and then stolen. And will they, again, defining they as the DNC, the globalist,
The cabal.
the cabal, deep state cabal, the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, what can they do? I don't think there's much limits on what they'll stop themselves from doing to prohibit a Trump presidency. But then again, how much is Trump owned? How much do they think they can contain Trump and direct him in the ways that are maybe the most dangerous thing for the American people, you and I, is a compromised Trump who the deep state can trot out there as a non-part or a non-political outsider still, but behind the scenes, he acts in all of the deep state ways. They might throw them a, they might throw us a bone or something like that about like they did in the first term, allowing him to roll back regulations. But and it is a little bit hopeful that the Supreme Court ruled regarding the Chevron defense that really will. I suspect, although again, how much is the deep state and all these unelected bureaucrats, how much are they even obeisant to the laws uh, in doling out the regulations, and therefore in turn justifying their very existence and jobs and careers? It's everybody talks about the wild, wild west of the 19th century and the American plains and the American West. It's the really wild, wild American region is modern, contemporary, the American East and along the Acela corridor between Washington and all the financial districts there, and then of course Washington itself. Oh, did I say New York or Washington? Washington, New York. Yeah, that's the wild, wild East.
Yeah.
Very lawless, extremely lawless.
I want to talk about this work of art.
Yeah,
It's 2 years old tomorrow.
I noticed your copy was one of the
I still keep the
test
not for
copies.
the not for resale one. I've got the hardcover back over there, but I like having this, the OG one, because I believe there's only two of these in the world, the not for
I
resale
suspect.
one.
Yeah.
So a little more rare,
Hmm.
a little more valuable, I think, maybe. But what are your reflections on a twisted history of the United States 2 years later?
It's as I look back and sometimes whether it's prior to falling asleep or if I just happen to have time at my desk for a little bit of calm, quiet, and even before or after contemplation, I'll grab the book once in a while and just read a random passage, kind of Augustinian tolle legere, pick up and read. And I'm it's a weird thing. I don't know if you experience this. I'd be interested in your take. But when I pick up the book, I have two reactions when I start reading it. One, I'm wowed by the fact that I don't remember writing it, or at least that passage. I think, oh wow, yeah, we wrote that. Um, and then I'm touched by as a work in its totality, it's great. I'm proud in the virtuous sense. I'm proud that we put out such a good book. And it took a lot of work. It took a lot of sweat and argument and discussion and exchange between you and I, between you, me, and Brett as the producer of the book and publisher, de facto publisher. And I'm so happy with it. And moreover, I guess the third reaction, if I was to be honest, is that, well, there's actually a fourth one I want to get to too, but the third one is that I'm, I just am wowed by that it's such a success. I'm happy about it. And I guess the fourth reaction is that I want to do it again soon. Not necessarily another version of Twisted History, or as many people ask us, when are you going to do the Twisted History of the United States from 1945 to the present? I'm not so much interested in that because as you read the book, the fundamental thrust of it is that American history as American history per se ends in 1945. That's the
Right.
twisted history. Now we'd have to look into, if we were going to write a history of the United States from 1945 onward, we're really not talking about a history of the United States. We're talking about the history of something else, whatever you want to call that. Is it the history of the industrial, military, industrial, pharmaceutical, central banking complex? Yes. However, I'm not so much interested in writing a book along those lines for whatever reason. I'm more interested in writing a book about, yes, history, but the application as the next project is going to focus on is the resonance and the confluence and the complementarity of anarcho-capitalism with Catholicism. But I love reading our book, and it's just encouraged me to continue on as a professional historian, even though I'm not in a profession that, although I have to say in my profession now, history and economics is valued, it's just not as academic in its nature. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
The first one, I feel a lot. The first sentiment you brought up about forgetting the work.
Mm-hmm.
I always said that the book, I've never worked on anything harder than the book. Now that changes when you start a business from zero. That's now the hardest thing that I've ever worked on.
Sure.
But 2 years of, like you were saying, I was thinking about this last night too. All of the readjustments, the adjustments, the little, you mentioned arguments over little details too, right? It's not, there's so many small details that go into creating something like this, that, and it's important because you have to get all the details right, because one detail could throw a bunch of other parts of the book off. You never know the sort of butterfly effect that
Sure.
happens
And
there.
when you're deep into a project, and a project that requires such meticulous concerns and elements, numerous elements, it may be innumerable elements. At that point, you're so far deep into it that you want it to be perfect. You want it to be
Exactly.
perfect,
We've
which
come
is
too far to only come this far.
precisely, we've come too far to allow it to be flawed in the most minute sense. And
Remember all of the issues we had with the color of the text boxes?
yes, yeah.
All of the back and forth with the formatting with Brett.
What
Those,
text, what font, what outlay in the pages, the quality of the paper that was going to be featured in the book. How about the cover? How many conversations did we have about the cover?
yeah, that's a big detail though. The cover is a
It
big
is.
detail,
It
but
is.
the text boxes, the random zooms with Brett, where we had to just, everyone was available at that time. We had to be on. Brett's on the
Mm-hmm.
bookmaker. Brett's on the West Coast, so we're up late talking
Yes.
about just talking about the way something is formatted, or the stars and exclamation points on
Mm-hmm.
on the, well, how about that boxes.
Sure.
And then the tweets, of course, making sure all the tweets are correct, all of the maps we have in here. Yeah, this is, and I will say this, not a much cooler feeling than signing a book that you wrote.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Someone saying, "Oh, I got to get your signature." That's like the coolest part of it all.
And with a recognition that this person is willing and desirous to expend a significant amount of time reading what your thoughts are, reading your work,
Yes,
because time is our scarcest resource as human beings, and they find it of value to sit down with it and hopefully elevate their understanding, or more so challenge their preconceived notions about American history. and really contemplate and then evaluate which one is, or which series of tenets or assertions are most accurate and true and most important, most significant, to have a better and more accurate grasp of where the country was, so as to define where it is today, why it is the way it is today, and how it can proceed either in a positive or negative sense into the future.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of when we started. The podcast started before the release of the book. I believe it was earlier that year.
I want to say our first podcast episode was late February of 2022.
That sounds right. If it's 129 episodes, 129 weeks, 52, 52, 104.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Yeah. February 2022. That's crazy. Not missing a week either.
No,
Throughout the
we never missed a week.
throughout the release of the book and then after.
But that's been a joy too. The podcast started off as a means by which, by and large, to promote the book, talk about what we were attempting to express and disclose about our takes on American history. But it really was the foundation and seed for this outlet for us. And I suspect too, well, I know, not just suspect, but I know from the feedback that our audience and audience members give us about how, as much as we might find this to be cathartic and helpful as we discuss everything from history to economics to our faith, theology, current events, all of those things of import, that, and as a very devoted fan of ours expressed to me just last week, meanwhile in Oak Park makes his week. And to have that type of reaction, whether it's catharsis or informative, enlightening, just for entertainment, I hope it's all the above. I get one more take on the book that I know I've expressed to you before, but it's a wonder. I've said this to you and I said it on the podcast. It's a very edifying thing for me to have written a book with a student of mine. And I look back sometimes, I think, okay, 8 years ago, or whatever time it was when you were sitting as a junior in high school, probably 6 years ago,
6 years ago,
6 or 7 years ago, in my US history class. And if you were to, like Marty McFly or Doc Brown, come to a back or go back from the future into the past to there and tell you or I that we were going to write a book together and that would be published and be a significant success together on American history, and it would be done within, at that point, 4 years of your graduation or such, we both would go, okay, that's insane. That's nuts. No one's gonna believe that.
So I like that you bring this point up, because this book is a large reason why I don't see myself. And sometimes I'll think to myself, especially sometimes I'll think to myself, oh, I'm actually just like the normal 23-year-old guy. And this book is a large reason that I think that. Sometimes I'll laugh after I think that now. Because there's no other 23-year-olds writing history books with their history teacher. Like, that's just so nerdy and so out there and so different that, yeah, sometimes I'll try to convince myself that, oh, I'm just like everyone else. Or I'm just the average guy.
The average Charlie.
Just
You're not the average Charlie. Bear.
The average 23-year-old. And then I'll look at the book and it's got my name on it, and just thinking about this journey over the last, like you were saying, 4 or 5 years. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a different road than some that most of my peers have taken.
And you
But
relish that because your life has taken such an independent and different alternative, let's call it alternative track in so many ways than your typical
yeah,
early
but
20 or
I guess that's where I was trying to
20.
get at, is that even especially with leaving college, part of that was saying I'm the average 23-year-old. I'm just not at college. But then I'll think about the book and say, no, this is not what everyone else is doing.
No, it's
I try
not.
to say that. I try to say that humbly, but it's just kind of the reality. Because it's a little, I don't know if isolating is the right word, because that makes it sound like, oh, I'm so lonely and stuff. But
Sure.
I think it's
Differentiating.
there you go. Yeah.
It makes you unique. I I was it made me think for a moment if I was your age and would I use the fact that I authored a history book at the age of 23?
So my name was on Amazon at 21 years old.
Yes, your name was on Amazon as an author at 21 years old,
Yeah.
and your book was ranked at one point in the top 100 of American history and economic history books.
Yeah, leave that part out. Leave
Okay,
that part.
but that's still pretty, that's impressive.
I don't know how vast that is. Like, is there 150 American history books?
Well,
I know the reviews have been positive, but
no, but I mean, it's actually because obviously as a book has uh we are becoming more and more distant from its publication, there's less sales,
right.
as you might suspect, until some school wisens up and becomes as caring about its students as it ought to be, and some school district buys the book en masse for their students to read and become awakened to authentic American history, unabashed and unashamed American history. But yeah, there are thousands of books there, tens of thousands, in fact, in American history. And then when you talk about American economic history, there are a little. I think we're ranked like 3,000. So at one point, we we're in the top 100 of that category. So that's an achievement of it in and of itself. But I was thinking, would I use that as a pickup line? I'm thinking if I was sitting in
No,
Jimmy's
that
Woodlawn
hasn't
Tap
that hasn't come
as
up.
a 22 or 23-year-old at the University of Chicago, would I have used that? Well, at the University of Chicago at Jimmy's Woodlawn Tap, I definitely would.
So
But
you
it's
know
a different situation than you'd probably find yourself in.
you know what's cool? There's been a couple people where they'll say, I'm sort of a history buff. And then I got to find out, which way are you leaning though?
Hmm.
And if you get that read, there's been a couple awesome, oh, I have a history book for you that you should read. Like I say it as a book recommendation first. And then I say, yeah, I actually co-authored it. And they're like, what? That's been cool. That's been
Yes.
really cool.
Hmm.
So, anyways,
It
yeah,
was a good time. I'm
I'm
proud of it.
very, yeah, me too.
Are there
There's a lot of other things. I mean, the opportunity cost, and it's the same argument with college. The opportunity cost, obviously, could have been doing a lot of other different things, but this was so good for my soul.
mm,
That's the number one. Is this book was amazing for my soul,
yes,
that I just didn't care
sure, sure.
at 19 or 20. Yeah, I'm doing this thing. Don't care.
Yeah,
If that makes sense. Not that
it
I
was
don't didn't care
therapeutic for
about the book.
me
Yeah.
it had a therapeutic element to it for me too, because I didn't want what I thought was really a collection of, in my estimation, golden interpretations, thoughts, tacts that I had deployed in my instruction to be forgotten or wasted or to evolve into the ether or be lost to the ether. So this is a way to make permanent, enter into the permanent record what I thought were my own individual and significant contributions to the field of American history, and the different what you see develop in the book, and you can attest to this or refute it, but the methodologies that I used in teaching are deployed within the book. They're present. So there will be times where in the book, I'll go into an aside about some ridiculous story that nonetheless is analogous or illustrates some grander point about early Republican history or Jacksonian democracy, or so the use of humor, the use of levity and thought experiments were deployed within the book just as they were utilized within my classroom.
Yeah, a lot of asides and it's a small world type rants.
Right. That's a good one. The ice cream effect regarding constitutional theory and
Yeah.
political theory that undergirded the Constitution, at least in Madison's mind. I like that ice cream effect one. When
Yeah.
you remarked in previous episodes when we were talking about the book about how when I would explain through a variety of examples or even modern day scenario situations, hypothetical, of course, but nonetheless illustrative, how the Federal Reserve works. And you could just go, nah, nah, no way. There's nothing like
Nah,
that.
learning about the Federal Reserve for the first time. I wish I could learn about the Federal Reserve for the first time again. That's a blue pill I would take. I would be blue pilled on the Fed. I would take the blue
Just to
pill
get red pilled
first
again.
just to get the red pill again.
I see.
Because that was a rabbit hole that was so engaging to me. Even when we weren't in class, just thinking, no way we all just do this, right?
Yes. We let an institution that is outside of the even remotest purview or examination of Congress or any institution that has a semblance of control by the American people or oversight by the American people in a constitutional republic or worse, democracy, determine the valuation of our money. And then in doing so empowers the government to advance upon innumerable programs that lead to the impoverishment of the everyday American and the aggrandizement and the enrichment of already established entities, powers, financial class, the banking class, the military industrial complex. Yes, it's just and the it's a rather simple means by which they do it, but it's all purposefully convoluted and confused in financial speak and economic fallacy and Keynesian theory. It's just, and monetarist theory. And then they'll have their defenders like even Milton Friedman called for market monetarism and stuff like that. So I'm glad that the book serves to deconstruct that. And if it deconstructs that, at the very least, along with deconstructing myths about the Civil War or the very notion that the United States, won World War II, which still to this day, if you speak to
Back to
your,
back world champs. You'll hear a lot of that this
yeah,
weekend.
back to back world champs, but self-proclaimed, self-proclaimed world champs. And it would be you're the self-proclaimed world champ after you destroyed the sport and you destroyed the ring and you destroyed the arena in which the event was held.
Have you seen I don't know if I sent this to you. The pictures of Nagasaki and Detroit
Yes,
compared to each
the side
other
by
over
sides.
time.
Mhm. And I guess the caption should be Washington did this in both instances.
Mm,
Not General Washington, the capital, the government.
yeah.
Or you have the Pam Beasley from The Office thing where it says,
It's the
tell me
same
the
picture.
distinction between these two,
Yeah.
uh, and she could say, well, there is no distinction. The government carried out both.
Right.
One was a slow destruction, one was instantaneous,
Yeah.
but it ruined millions of lives, hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
I'm proud of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Proud of the journey last 4 years. Last two. It's crazy to think that it's like what do they call it in the heliocentric model where it's like the sun's on the other side. I don't know. I don't know what the terms are, but thinking that the book now is kind of like the midpoint between now, the current date, and then when we started.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
weird. That's weird to think about. That there's been as much time after the book as there
Mm.
was before,
Yeah.
and while working on it. I'm trying
It's
to
so
think
funny. My fun's
which. Go ahead.
go ahead.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, that just actually about a month ago after school ended for my youngest son, he said to me, Dad, I want to write a book with my friend. And I said, Oh, that's great. He goes, Well, you could publish it. I said, Oh, thanks. He said, How long do you think it's going to take? I said, Well, my book took 2 years. He goes, 2 years? So yeah, from start to finish, it takes a lot of time and work. And considering if we would have gone with an established publisher instead of self-publishing, it might be coming out right now,
Right.
which is just
Oh my
very,
gosh.
very
Oh my
scary to
gosh.
think
I don't
of.
know what I think about that.
Yeah, yeah. And then we'd be going on like book tours and appearances to promote the book, and we'd have to recollect about what we
We'd be
wrote.
going on like AM radio stations
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then
with
getting
some
banned from
with
AM
some
radio
middle, yeah,
stations.
exactly, with some middle of the road conservative host.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of when Tom Woods put out the politically incorrect guide to American history. Sean Hannity had him on the show, but then during the interview, Hannity starts because of course he didn't read the book. He starts lauding and praising the decisions and leadership of FDR. And Tom went, "What are you talking about? That's FDR is not a conservative." I mean, Sean Hannity had no idea that one would be extremely, extremely, what would be the word, challenged to mount an authentic conservative defense of FDR and his administration. But for him, the New Deal was conservative. I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane. So I sometimes feel as though I use that word insane to describe things. So it's a rather risible, laughable thing that even the prospect of us going off to do the same thing, I think we would find ourselves in this similar situation when, in fact, we have, if you remember the interviews that I had to do, or I was called to do at Freedom Fest, right? Where you're kind of standard, more conservative leaning, although liberty leaning conservative, one might call him, would be shocked. The fact that I said we didn't win World War II. I mean, again, I feel like sometimes the Bart Sabrell moon landing guy, when he says the biggest conspiracy is not that the moon landing was faked, but rather that we have so many people that believe it was still real. It just depends on your perspective. So what's the conspiracy surrounding modern American history, or American, if we're going to dub it as such, history of the United States since World War II or since 1945? It's the belief that we've all, I shouldn't say all of us, but the vast, vast, vast majority of Americans through several generations now have been sold that, as Joe Biden says, well, we're America. We can do whatever we want. Nothing's impossible for us, that sort of thing. And it all is grounded in that fallacious myth that we won a two-front world war after which followed the United States becoming the determinant power in World War I.
Yeah.
And therefore justifies big science. It justifies the Sputnik movement. It justifies it justifies Bretton Woods. I mean, can you imagine Bretton Woods without the United States having participated and then winning World War II? There would be no dollar reserve. The dollar wouldn't be the reserve currency if the United States didn't first at least project itself as the determinant power in World War I, and then project itself as the determinant power in World War II. So to deconstruct these myths, I think is absolutely essential for people to get a real sense of what's going on.
You want to talk about anything else, or do you want to talk about a town that hasn't applied many of the principles in the book?
Let's talk about that town that we don't have a lot of sales from.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
It's the people segment. Meanwhile in Oak Park, got 3 stories. Let's actually start in River Forest. We've got taxes. I'm going to rank these in order that I'm most excited about. Okay, we'll go right to left. RF has planned to offset loss of grocery tax revenue. Village officials expected to institute local 1% tax. So we talked about this a little bit last week.
Yes, that municipalities have the option to raise the tax
because there's no such thing as big government. That we need to eliminate that term from our vernacular. That big government sucks. I'm so sick of hearing that from people. Everything is interconnected with grants and funds. It's not easy to see this now. This is not, these are not separate. these are not, they're not separate from each other.
Sure.
Anyways, although eliminating the statewide tax on groceries will leave a $1 million hole in River Forest budget, village officials are expected to institute a local tax on groceries that would offset the loss.
Forgive me for asking to pause and intrude upon your reading at this very early moment, but I love how in the Wednesday Journal, there's never a consideration, nor is there even the slightest allusion to the idea that when a government, local, state, municipal, you name it, all the way to national, loses a revenue source, then maybe they should just cut back expenditure.
Ever.
It's not even admitted to. This again would be further instantiation and proof of Robert Higgs's ratchet theory. You know, when you ratchet the government up, just like a ratchet, it never turns back. The expenditure, that is. Go ahead, forgive me.
Quote, the village budget would be significantly impacted by the elimination of the grocery tax, said Matt Walsh, village administrator. River Forest is fortunate to have several popular grocery stores, and we expect approximately $1.1 million in grocery tax revenue each year. Losing that revenue would potentially mean the reduction in services or the replacement of that revenue with other sources, which would have a negative impact on taxpayers.
Tax them more. Don't cut the spending.
The reduction in services.
Yeah, the reduction in services. Is there a more general phrase than that regarding government action? Reduction in services.
River Forest is home to a Jewel Osco store and a Whole Foods market. Whole Foods officials have already announced an expansion of the River Forest store. Quote, fortunately, the state recognized this impact and allowed municipalities to maintain the tax, Walsh said. We expect the village board to consider local adoption prior to its expiration. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker announced elimination of the 1% statewide grocery tax as part of his proposed $52.8 billion budget for fiscal year 2025. Illinois lawmakers supported the move when they approved the $53.1 billion state budget. The change doesn't take effect until Jan 1, 2026. Local governments will be able to institute their own 1% tax on groceries without holding a referendum. Eliminating the grocery tax had municipal leaders led by the Illinois Municipal League complaining that it would hurt their budgets. State leaders were not giving anything up with the change because the tax only went to local governments. The option for municipalities to add their own tax was a compromise. Illinois will join 37 other states that don't have a state grocery tax. It was the only state among the 10 most populated with a grocery tax.
Not even California has a grocery tax, huh?
Quote, obviously the governor needed to eliminate the tax statewide, said Kathy Aducci, village president. The key is this is not a new tax.
Why does that matter? That's just optics, right?
Yes. She's saying that the 1% was always there, but since Illinois took it away, we're just replacing it. It's just instead of going to the state of Illinois, it's going to the village.
Well, actually, no, I don't think it went to the state of Illinois at all. It always went to municipal government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah. We'll just keep paying more.
Yes, keep paying more. And then, of course, being the astute journalists that they are at Wednesday Journal, wouldn't you, whose voice is not heard who should be in this whole piece? What do you think?
The consumer.
The consumer.
Wait, let's read this. I just want to read, this caught my eye because this is really this is editorial. In the most obvious and necessary move it could make, River Forest expects to impose a 1% sales tax on groceries. That's
obvious and necessary.
That's the start of that sentence or the whole article.
Another entity that's not represented here is how about the actually grocery store owners who would benefit from having
How about
the
the
overall cost of their
employees?
goods reduced?
How about the employees at those grocery stores?
Correct. As profits were freed up, they could be allocated to their most advantageous areas, and that might be hiring more people. It might be reducing the cost because you're going to have to scale, or you could scale. It would make it, and it could make, in a kind of grocery Laffer curve, it could make people come or increase sales to such a degree that you would have more tax revenue. Or just overall economic activity in River Forest. But no, let's put on that 1% tax.
That's story number one. Story number two, I am really excited. I think we might have to add a song in here. Oak Park Public Health Director Teresa Chappell steps down.
No, oh man. There's got to be some sort of jingle of celebration. We got to.
Chappell took on the position in May 2021.
She steps down. I wonder what scandal will come in the Oak Leaves or Wednesday Journal in the coming weeks.
After about 3 years in the position, Oak Park's Public Health Director Teresa Chappell will be officially leaving her role July 12th.
Why did she drop the Magruder? Magruder.
That's a good point. Chappell is taking a couple weeks. Hold on, let me pull this up.
She's taking a couple weeks of vacation now.
It's interesting they also didn't call her doctor.
Is she a doctor of education?
I don't
Is
know.
that why they?
I don't know.
She's Dr. Jill Biden, but River Forest and Oak Park's version.
She's posting pictures poolside.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
Chappell's taking a couple weeks of vacation now, according to village officials, and is not expected back by the time her official tenure concludes. For now, Deputy Village Manager Lisa Shelley will oversee the public health department, which celebrated its 75th anniversary this year.
Because the public health department required a person of such high professional qualifications, right?
The deputy
That
village
the
manager
deputy village manager could take over
just took over
without missing a beat.
Dan Yopchik, the village's chief communications officer, did not know if Chappell left for a new position, but she hinted to that on X, formerly known as Twitter. Chappell has about 43,000 followers on the app. She definitely got a big payday somewhere.
Sure.
Quote, I'm humbled by my next opportunity, which will allow my sick to make an impact at both the local and national level, she wrote.
Oh, great. Chappell Magruder's going national. That's all we need.
I'm so grateful to have spent the last 3 years as a local public health director. It was challenging and fulfilling. I'm humbled by my next opportunity. Okay, that's the tweet. First thing first, summer fun to celebrate change. Is she going to be the next Fauci? Are we going to be?
Oh, man.
Well, she's going
to be Kamala's vice VP.
Chappell did not respond immediately to a Wednesday Journal request for comment. A search is underway to fill the vacancy, according to village officials. Chappell, a governmental and applied epidemiologist, according to the village, began her role in May 2021, while Oak Park in the United States dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic. According to village officials, she supported the community's safety during that time, overseeing one of only 4 certified public health departments in suburban Cook County.
Why don't the other suburbs in Cook County have a certified public health department? Probably because they can't afford it. And secondly, it's totally superfluous.
The Oak Park Department of Public Health helps protect the community from preventable death, disease, illness, and injury. According to a village statement, services provided include health assessments, education, prevention care, case management, and counseling.
Shouldn't it be preventative care, not prevention care?
Not sure.
Okay.
Chappell has worked at local, state, and federal health agencies.
So that means she's never had a job in the private sector.
Prior to her move to Oak Park, she led the Women's Health Data and Evaluation Team at the Health Resources and Services Administration in Rockville, Maryland, Wednesday Journal reported. In the village's statement, village manager Kevin Jackson said Oak Park is thankful for her contributions to the village's public health efforts. Quote, from working with the community on our pandemic response to developing a wide-ranging immunization program to heightening our response to opioid overdose prevention, providing unwavering support for asylum-seeking families in Oak Park and more, Dr. Chappell's impact here was nothing short of significant. Jackson said in the statement. We wish her well as she steps back from this role in order to spend more time with her loving family.
Isn't it wild that the person in charge of public health and defraying the spread of infectious disease was also the person charged and accepted the role of welcoming in migrants who had not been vetted nor the infectious diseases which they carried tracked into Oak Park? Does that not just smack in the face of the operation of governmental institutions? As you say, Charlie, there's no such thing as the awful big government. The virus of government, the virus of the state is infectious down to the very local level, the most proximate level to communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not the best color man in the league for nothing, folks.
Right. A gun club for Black women aims to give them back their power.
Yes.
Oak Park,
right.
Illinois. Here we go. Soul
Good.
Sister Shooting Club teaches sisterhood along with gun safety. As crimes against Black women and girls increased around her, Arua, Karen Winters
Oh,
said
Karen.
she decided she needed protection. Although the 15th District Police Councilwoman had held her FOID card for 20 years, she decided it was time to get her concealed carry license. Owning a firearm was not an easy decision for Winters, but she felt it was necessary. Now, she's working as a part of a club with other women to learn about how to better protect themselves and to use and handle firearms safely through Soul Sister Shooting Club, a nationally recognized shooting club for Black women with members in Illinois, Mississippi, and Texas.
Man, I want to go get my concealed carry license with them. I'm a soul sister.
Soul Sister Shooting Club launched last September with confounding member Iracine Jefferson, a brand ambassador and instructor in training. Winter,
the confounding member. It's co-founding, not confounding. People were confused about her membership. That's so confounding. She's
yeah.
She's affiliated here. I'm confused. She's the confounding member.
Winter shared.
Everybody was clear what the goal of the organization was until Aristine Jefferson came on and
confounding member. Winter shared what owning a firearm is like for her. Quote, I struggle with it because I'm terrified of guns, but at the same time, I'm also terrified of what can happen to me just being in my community without one, Winter said. We're single women moving through the South and West Side communities, so it's just a matter of safety, Winters explained. For Black women, protecting their own lives is existential.
Oh, shit.
What?
Oh, shit. Oh my God.
Protecting their own lives.
Who wrote this one? You see who wrote this one? This one might go down as one of the better.
Deborah Bayless.
Deborah Bayless. God bless you,
protecting their own lives.
I'm confounded by how well you got to write in a column.
Protecting their own lives is the definition of existential.
Oh.
Research shows that the West Side communities last year reported the most robberies in the city. A CBS 2 analysis of police data also showed that in 2022, Black women were the victims in 35% of city assaults, 38% of batteries, and 50% of human trafficking cases, but make up only 16% of the city's population. As for why those women are victims, Geneva Brown, a professor of criminology at DePaul University, pointed out in a story published by The Root that Black women in some cases have to work late night shifts and are out at times when there's not a lot of police presence, such as at bus stops or on the L.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? I'd love to have Wilfred Riley talk with Geneva Brown. I think another reason is because Black men commit a disproportionate amount of violent crime. And Black women are around Black men more. No? Is that
I just don't think that point's going to come up in the article.
No, I would think not. I would think not, Charlie. Thank you for pointing that out.
Jefferson, who obtained her concealed carry license in 2020, said she has gained a sense of empowerment and safety. Quote, some people look at guns as a bad thing, but the gun itself is not the problem. It's the people that have the guns. Whoa, Jefferson said.
Well,
As a concealed carry holder, we hope that we never have to use it. But if the time arises, we're prepared to use it. I started out fearful of guns, but the more you grow and develop, you become more efficient in handling it. Winters and Jefferson obtained their shooting instructions from Aben Advantage Consulting, a consulting business founded by Chief Instructor Eric Beckton, which primarily provides firearms safety and training, individual and institutional security development, and emergency preparedness.
that's actually a well-written paragraph.
Beckton, who has nearly 3 decades of firearms instruction and multiple nationally recognized instructor certifications, said when you deal with firearms training, what you're really dealing with is self-defense.
How did this article get into the Wednesday Journal? Somebody
I don't
must
know.
be Ravi Parakat pushing his finger on the scales.
Quote, a FOID card is not required to take the concealed carry class. However, you should know that you are in good standing with the law and don't have anything that would disqualify you from having a FOID card, because if you're not eligible for a FOID card, you would not be eligible for a concealed carry license as the state of Illinois is currently structured. Beckton explained. Soul Sister Shooting Club aims to provide an environment of nurturing sisterhood, but it also aims to help women develop the art of handling handguns. Full wraparound services such as additional online courses, image-based training, medical training, emergency preparedness, and total engagement of critical self-defense are offered as part of Aben's services that the club members receive being part of Aben. Pamela Jenkins of Oak Park said she obtained her concealed carry license and joined the club because she wanted to overcome her fear of guns and be prepared if she ever had to use it.
All right, Pamela.
Both Beckton and Winters caution that it's not enough to just go out and purchase a firearm. They stress getting the proper training and the basic fundamental things you should know, even how to carry it on your person and how to interface it with the police if you're pulled over while carrying your firearms so that you can safely come out of that police engagement.
All very good. Yeah.
Wow.
That's all smart.
It's the best article in years.
I loved it. That was Meanwhile in Oak Park?
July 4th weekend.
Woo.
Get a little patriotic.
I am. I'm feeling
that fired up.
I'm feeling that sisterhood of the Soul Sisters coming in over me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
How are you spending your 4th, Charlie?
I'm going to Wisconsin.
All right, nice. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on the other side of 4th of July, we hope to see everybody for our next episode, and who knows what that might be about, what might transpire between now and then. That's the beauty of human life.
Best part about the podcast, too.
Amen.
You just never know.
President Kamala.
All right, everyone.
Peace.
God bless.